Hey everybody, happy Earth Month. My name is Tia Silvasy. I'm the Florida Friendly Landscaping Agent with the University of Florida, IFAS Extension in Orange County. And today I'm going to present to you just a brief introduction to Florida Friendly Landscaping and go over the 9 principles. So my contact information is down here at the bottom, tsilvasy@ufl.edu, or you can reach me by phone 407-254-9200. Also, be sure to check us out on Facebook. We have Garden Florida Facebook and Orange County Extension Instagram. I'll have that all at the end to remind you. So let's get started. So, what is Florida Friendly Landscaping? Well, it's actually a joint partnership between the University of Florida and the Florida Environmental Protection Department. And what the goal of Florida Friendly Landscaping is to have people like yourself be able to have a beautiful, attractive landscape that does not hurt the environment. It's actually a water quality protection program because what you do in your landscape affects what goes into our water bodies. In Winter Park, we have such beautiful water resources. The Winter Park chain of lakes is just beautiful. I love kayaking out there. And we also have the springs in Florida. We have so many lakes and rivers and springs and the ocean front. We want to protect it all. We want to conserve our water. And so these strategies used together will help you to have a beautiful landscape that does conserve water and is easy to maintain. So again, our goals are to conserve water and to protect water quality and to give you a beautiful landscape. Here's the 9 Florida friendly principles. And like I said, they all work together to help you, take care of your landscape. And using these principles will help you make good decisions on what to do. You'll know the basics, how to water, how to fertilize, how to reduce water runoff, and protect the environment. Principle number 1 is right plant, right place. And this is really the cornerstone of the Florida Friendly Landscaping Program because plants selected for a specific site that meet the site conditions, they will require minimal water, fertilizer, pesticides, and maintenance. Think of the native plants that were just in Florida before we even came. They didn't have anybody taking care of them. The plants, they can just survive in the Florida conditions, and so we want to find suitable plants like that that will live in our landscapes. And Florida friendly plants can be native, they can be non-native, but they have to be suited for the right place in your landscape. And that's going to depend on, what is your soil's pH? Is your yard shady or sunny? Do you have wet or dry soil? Everyone's yard is going to be a little bit different, and we can help you navigate those. Low maintenance plants is another thing we advocate for in Florida friendly landscaping. Plants that grow the right size for the right place, that don't need to be pruned all the time, or that don't get a lot of pest or disease problems. So we want to consider the mature size when choosing plants and avoid overcrowding. The picture here on the right shows a tree that was planted under a power line. So you can see the tree has to be pruned now, probably once or more a year to grow in that very crazy shape. And the picture here on the left is just a bird of paradise. Birds of paradise do great in Florida, but it's a little bit too big for that pool enclosure. So you can see the leaves sticking out over it. So good plant for Florida, but planted in the wrong place. Now, a great way to learn more about this concept, you can Google and get a free PDF of this book, or you can sign up for an upcoming workshop I have in April 20th, where we will mail you a copy, the hard copy of this book. The book is called The Florida Friendly Landscaping Guide to Plant Selection and Landscape Design, and it contains hundreds of plant species, and it tells you what do they like, full sun, part sun, what kind of soil soil pH can they tolerate, um, sun or shade, wet or dry, all those things. Every detail about the plant is in here, including which plants are good for butterflies, birds, hummingbirds, to help you attract wildlife into your yard. So back to right plant, right place. So another way to help your landscape is dealing with difficult areas. So you might have a big shady tree where the grass really doesn't want to grow. It's, a difficult area. So what you can do is just select a different plant, maybe Asiatic jasmine, which is pictured around that oak tree there, that can tolerate a high shade better than turf grass. And that will look good in that area. Ferns also do well in shady areas. And we also want to add biodiversity to our landscape. We don't want just monoculture, all the plants are the same. We want to add different plants that will provide different benefits, especially to wildlife, to the bees, to the butterflies, to birds. That way we can bring life into our landscape as many natural areas are being converted to urban areas. Principle number 2 is to water efficiently. So we want to conserve water. Here's how you do it. Water in the early morning or the evening is the best. So before 10 a.m. or after 4 p.m. That way you reduce the amount of evaporation of the water during the hottest part of the day. Also water when the wind is calm. That can also increase evaporation. And when temperatures are cooler. So, approximately 60% of a residential water bill is attributed to irrigation systems. So, be mindful of that. You also need to adjust your irrigation controller seasonally. Um, the table in the bottom right corner shows you which days are watering during different parts of the year. So, during daylight savings time, which is happening right now in March, then you can water twice per week. And during the winter time, when we're not in daylight savings time, it's just once per week. And then also when we get the heavy summer rains, you may want to just turn your irrigation completely off at that time because we're getting on average 7 or 8 inches of rain per month. Plants like about 1 inch of rain per week, and so plenty of irrigation for the plants. Overwatering is bad for plants too. If you have this weed, this dollar weed in your lawn, that's an indication that you're overwatering. Overwatering also promotes weeds, fungi, and bacteria. So the St. Augustine grass diseases, the fungal diseases, that is often in the late fall when we're just saturated with water. It also promotes a shallow root system, making the plant weak. Now, you need to know that all automatic landscape irrigation systems, it is required by law to have a rainwater shutoff device, such as a rain sensor that is going up on your gutter, or a soil moisture probe that actually goes down into the ground. And that way we're not wasting water by irrigating when it rains. Principle number 3 is to fertilize appropriately. So we want to use the fertilizer ordinance, which that restricts fertilizer between June 1st and September 30th. So always read the label. And we usually do not apply phosphorus since this very high naturally occurring in our soil. So here's the calendar here. The good months to fertilize are March, April, and May while we're going into our growth season in the spring. No fertilizer during the summer months. And then once the ordinance ends at September 30th, then you can fertilize again. December, January, and February, the plants are going dormant in the winter, not actively growing. And so at that time, fertilizer is not that important. But be careful when fertilizing. Never fertilize within 10 feet of any water body, and never fertilize within 24 hours of a rain event because the water can carry the nutrients and to our water bodies, and we want to avoid doing that. We want the fertilizer to go to the plant roots. One last thing is to use at least 50% slow release nitrogen. So this will slow down the release of the nutrients, kind of like Osmocote fertilizer. And this will be good for your lawn at least 50%, maybe 65%. Some of the new fertilizers are going to. But if you apply that slow release nitrogen here in the spring, then it will carry it for the next couple months while we have the no fertilizer ban. So make sure you look on the label for the slow release nitrogen in the fertilizers. The principle number 4 is mulch. So mulch is very good for landscapes, especially organic matter mulch, made from, trees like pine bark. Melaleuca is a good one from recycled tree weeds. We like to avoid cypress mulch because sometimes we're not sure where it's been sourced from, if it came out of a wetland or a swamp. Pine straw is also good, or the tree trimmer mulch. You can go to chipdrop.com and get them to deliver it to your door. I think City of Winter Park might even have a mulch program too. So you want to apply a 2 to 3 inch layer on all your landscape beds and around your trees. You do not want the mulch actually touching the base of the tree, so pull it back a couple inches from the tree trunk. But mulch helps in so many ways. It buffers the soil temperature, keeping our soil cool, which is good for the plants. It makes the plants healthy, not get stressed out when it's too hot here in Florida. It also prevents weeds and inhibits weed germination. It breaks down into organic matter, which helps to build the soil. So many benefits of mulch. You should apply it, once or twice a year. Keep a nice healthy layer on there. Principle 5 is to attract wildlife. And it's very important that we create habitat for wildlife in our urban areas, because we lost a lot of our natural areas here in Central Florida, and now we just have houses and sidewalks and driveways, and we lost that biodiversity of plants. So if everyone plants a couple extra flowering plants or bird attracting plants in their landscape, it will bring the life back to your yard and your community. And so what you can do is just plant some of those flowers in your yard and encourage your neighbor to plant some beneficial plants for wildlife. And you can have your own little wildlife corridor where there's plenty of food for birds and butterflies and other creatures to survive. So a little bit on how to do it. One, you want a variety of plants, and you want to choose plants of varying height. So low growing, medium growing, and something, a little head high, 15 feet high. And that will provide shelter and habitat for the wildlife, the birds to fly up in there and the butterflies. So the more diverse, the better. If you can have 100 different plant species in your yard, then you get a gold star. So all of these plants will be providing food for wildlife, and it could be in the form of flowers that have nectar and pollen, or fruits or seeds or nuts. And just follow the right plant for the right place. If you have a shady area, look for shade plants and use the Florida Friendly Landscaping Guide to help with your decision making. So principle number 6 is managing yard pests responsibly. So the first step here is scouting. Like, look and see what kind of pests you have. If you have a question, then you can send it to myself or your other local extension agents, and we can help you identify the pest. So start by identifying the pest and finding out, is it good or is it bad? Pictured here on the right is a ladybug, which is a good bug, eating an aphid, which is a bad bug. But really, aphids aren't that bad, and sometimes there's no point of killing them because it provides food for the ladybug and other beneficial insects who you want to keep around in your landscape for a more ecological landscape where there's food, the pests for the beneficials, and they're eating each other, and there's natural prey and predators going on with the insects in your yard. If you do decide you need to spray, if you have a pest outbreak that calls for action, you want to start with the least toxic materials like natural or organic products are your first go-to. And then if that doesn't work, then you can treat with a heavier duty chemical. And instead of treating the whole yard, just treat the exact area where the pest is. We call that spot treat. Spot treat the area that is having a problem and then check on it. You may need to retreat if necessary. So here's a little bit more about biological control. So not only does the flowers help the bees and the butterflies, but it also attracts beneficial insects that will help attack the pests in your garden. So pictured here on the right are a couple beneficial insects. The assassin bug, it has that funny looking mohawk. It's also called a wheel bug. And that is a beneficial insect that will eat your pests. Also spiders like this green lynx spider pictured here on the beautiful zinnia flower that will help to eat your garden pests as well. Um, so remember that when you're planting biodiversity, a lot of different species in your yard, then you'll be attracting these beneficial insects and they'll help keep the pests in your yard under control naturally. Principle number 7 is to recycle yard waste. And you are lucky to live in the city of Warner Park, where they have an excellent program that you can take a class with myself and Vanessa, who's the sustainability coordinator, and you can get a free Earth Machine composter bin. So these are really good, the composting bins for recycling your food waste and your yard waste. You can put your leaves in there. And composting will help build soil and return those nutrients to your landscape or your vegetable garden or wherever you put it. It also saves money on fertilizer and mulch and waste disposal, having the big truck come around and having to bag your leaves. Another strategy is to kind of like compost in place. On the bottom picture on the right, you can just rake the leaves here, the pine, into the nice landscape beds, and you don't have to worry about getting rid of them. There will be a self-mulching area, and that's a great sustainable way to mulch your landscape beds. So composting really helps to build the soil and build the health of the soil. And it can be done in many ways, such as cover crops, crop rotation, tilling in the organic matter for farmer and vegetable gardeners. But in the landscape, just mowing your grass and leaving the clippings in the yard is a great way to do it. And also, raking the leaves into the landscape beds. You can cover the leaves up with a little bit of purchased mulch too if you want that manicured look. And you can also do worm composting. That's a great thing. And so this helps to add life to your soil in the form of decomposers such as earthworms, fungi, and good bacteria. And so those things are working, under the ground. We can't really see them, but it's like probiotics for your yard. And you want to have them because they help with your plant health. They help your plant's immunity and protect it from pests and diseases. And it helps also with the nutrient and the water absorption. So really important. If you don't make your own compost, then you can also purchase compost and top dress your lawn or your landscape beds or your vegetable garden with the purchased bags of compost as well. So principle number 8 is to prevent stormwater runoff. And what we want to do is we want to prevent excess nutrients from entering our waterways because that leads to excessive aquatic weed and algae growth. It reduces the water clarity It could lead to fish kills and loss of recreation. We want to be able to swim and enjoy our beautiful waterways here in Florida. So, what you can do to prevent that is to keep the storm drains clear and clean. These mowings should not be in the storm drain. That is illegal, and you can get a violation for that. Instead, mow them towards the lawn, blow them, bag them. And then other ways to keep the storm drains clean and to prevent stormwater runoff is just to slow down the water that's coming off your yard. Try to keep more water in your yard with areas that it can permeate into the groundwater, like your landscape beds and your turf. Make your downspout from your house go into your garden areas. You can also add rain barrels to store some of that water for a non-rainy day, or something like a rain garden or a little swale that will just hold the water and let it seep into your landscape. That helps to recharge the aquifer. Here's a picture of our watershed. A watershed is everything that goes into the water stream, in Winter Park, in Orange County. Most of us are in the St. John's Water Management District, where all the water eventually ends up in the St. John's River and then the Atlantic Ocean. So everything going on in the watershed is affecting the water quality. What kind of chemicals you're putting into your yard or the streets, your neighborhoods, how well our water bodies are protected with vegetation to help filter out, some of the pollutants. And it ends up in the river, or it goes infiltrates into the ground to our groundwater supply, and recharges our aquifer. So that's very important. That water, that's where our springs, the fresh water. So we want to keep that going. We don't want to waste water, and we want to keep it clean. So principle 9, the final principle, is to protect the waterfront. So there's several ways to do this. You want to establish a 10-foot buffer area between the landscape and the shoreline. And it can be native Florida plants, but it doesn't have to be. It can be non-natives like are pictured here. We have the daylily and the purple lavender, and then the pink knotweed ground cover next to this seawall in the lake. So this helps to absorb the nutrients, because remember, we don't want the fertilizer to go near the water. It also provides places for wildlife and prevents erosion, because you have all those roots from the plants stabilizing the bank. And it helps to protect the waterfront. So you may need to remove some invasive exotics, because a lot of those like to grow near the water. Think torpedo grass or Brazilian pepper, but be careful because that might require permits. So contact myself or your local environmental protection agency to ask what are the specific requirements for your area, or the city of Winter Park would know too. So here's what you want it to look like. You want to have a little bit of plants in the water. You want to have some nice clumps of beneficial plants along the edge of the water. And then you can have your landscape and your turf grass, next to that. But keep the fertilizer away. You don't need to irrigate this area, and that will keep it looking good. And that concludes my presentation. So I hope you learned the basics of Florida-friendly landscaping. If you want to take out your smartphone, if you're watching this on your computer, and scan the little QR code and take my quick survey, that will really help with my program. My contact info is here, and you can also visit me on my Garden Florida Facebook page, also our Orange County Extension Instagram page. You can just Google Florida Friendly Landscaping, and we have a brand new website that has lots of information for homeowners and communities and professional landscapers as well. And you can also look at my blogs if you Google my name and University of Florida blogs, to read some of the stuff that I'm writing about, some different plants like butterfly gardening or milkweed or wildflowers or vegetable gardening. I have all kinds of topics on there. So Thanks for tuning in to my presentation here, and I hope you learned something about Florida Friendly, and feel free to contact me if you have any questions. Thank you, and happy Earth Day.